everybody. Welcome to the Faith and Fandom Podcast's Artist's Alley Aftermath Edition. Technically, it's not Artist's Alley, but it's kind of Artist's Alley because I had my booth set up. But this time, and for technically the first, maybe second event of the year, you know what? I'll cover both events because they were a week apart, and I didn't do one for the other one. So, I'm going to cover two events. One is the Art Meets Life poetry event in Fayetteville, North Carolina, which took place on February 7th. And the other one will be the Carolina Christian Youth Conference for 2025 in Greensboro, North Carolina. So let's cover both of those because they were both whole days and things have going on. So for years now, almost a decade, I've been a part of the Art Meets Life poetry community in Fayetteville. My friend LJ, who some of y'all might know from like Nerd Slam and things like that, being around Faith and Fandom, he's always been a big supporter and encourager of it, offered me the chance to be the poetry feature for the I guess first or second one. The Art Meets Life always takes place the first Friday in the month at the Sweet Palette in Fayetteville and the coffee shop that's adjoined to it, which I don't know the name of. And Art Meets Life usually consists of, that night will be an open mic night from like 8 until 9:30. And then a featured poet will perform from 9 until 10. Now, you can sing, you can music, you can do any of the things, but 99% of the time it's just people doing poetry. And I got involved with it because it was the first place I've done poetry for real. And I would go there and I would do poetry specifically to say the things that don't fit in Faith and Fandom or church or anywhere else. And a lot of times they were artistic or just venting or whatever else. And so LJ asked me if I was willing to do that. And so I said yes. And so one of the first things I did because I think he asked me in like December, maybe January. No, it had to be earlier than that. November, I don't know, somewhere in there. When he asked me, one of the first things I did was start working on my poetry that I've done over the years, because I had like 4 or 5 notebooks that had scattered poems in them, as well as some stuff on like TikTok, and but it was never compiled. So I compiled and transcribed all of those poems, and then I drew a sketch for each of those poems and had it added to the bottom of the pages, and I printed a book out of it. And I did all of this almost completely for this one event. And also just to kind of collect my poetry because it's kind of floating in the ether. And so it was a good experience. It was cathartic in a lot of ways. But some of the poems I haven't visited in 8 years. And were honestly kind of painful. But, it is what it is. But leading up to the event, it was kind of a busy work week. I had to do a lot of photography for a fire college and all this other stuff. But also this event was taking place on Friday. On Wednesday, LJ, was taken out and had to go to the hospital. He had a blockage in his colon, and if he hadn't gone to the hospital when he did, he could have died. And so he was the one running the event. So I honestly wasn't certain if the event was going to still happen. And you also want to be that guy that's like, yo, I know you're dying in the hospital, but are you still going to have me as featured at this event? So I, his wife eventually messaged me, and said that Law, who's another friend of ours, who's also in the poetry scene, the Comic-Con scene, and all the scenes, was going to host the event and it was going to carry on. So, I showed up, brought in my little booth of stuff, and went and sat up and just kind of hung around. My friend Josh Collins and his family, who are new to the area, they just moved up here from Georgia, came and they were there early, like right when the doors opened. My friend Katie from Dungeons and Dragons and Roller Derby was there. My friend Megan from church was there. So I had like 3 people that were there, just like, or 3 collective groups who were there primarily in support for me, which was nice and encouraging. I just kind of hung around and played Pokemon while I waited. I also was going to be doing a new poem that night, so I was a little bit anxious in a lot of ways, because it also involved musical instruments, and I had a lot of chaos with it because also in this process I learned that a baritone ukulele, which I got for Christmas, doesn't play the same notes and doesn't tune to the same strings, and I've been tuning it wrong and playing it just like a ukulele for like 2 months, and I realized I've been doing the wrong thing, which was its own chaos. But I get there, set up, people come do the open mic. There's a lot of cool poets. My friend Megan does poems and I hadn't heard her do poetry out loud before, so that was cool. There's a lot of interesting pieces and stuff like that. Night went really great. And then I did an interview with Law, and he did a great job. He did a really great job hosting, honestly. And got to, I don't know, I can't tell you all the questions that were asked, but it was honestly a good panel discussion. And I felt like something I said at least hit everybody in the room at some point. So I feel like that's good. And then eventually got up and did, so all the poems that are in that book I wrote and have now performed specifically in that same space for Art Meets Life. And there were only 4 poems in that book I had not performed at Art Meets Life, and so I did those. One was called Honestly. One was called Spoken, and one was called The Drop. It was about crying. And the other one was one that was the A minor one, which I wrote to do along with ukulele, which basically I would play an A minor on a ukulele and the whole crowd would go A minor and it would fit into the poem. It's on my Instagram and on my TikTok if you want to see it. But I did the thing. Poetry went good. People responded really well. Sold a couple poetry books, sold a Mary and Martha book. And then I had a really encouraging conversation with a lady who does domestic violence ministry. And she was really encouraged. Also, my friend Dot, who's one of our Patreon supporters, sent me a box of cupcakes from the bakery next door, which was super dope. And so overall, it was a good experience. I left feeling thoroughly expressed and was grateful to notch that off my belt, grateful for the opportunity. Really sad LJ wasn't there, but Law did do a good job. And so, yeah, that was a fun experience. Now, fast forward 1 week, the other interesting, not Comic-Con experience I had was at the Carolina Christian Youth Conference. So what made this event such a different and not weird event, that the event was weird, it's just weird for me, is because I don't do Christian events, like, next to ever. Like, it's been so long since I've done a Christian event. Like, I feel like Next Fest, the Christian music festival, is the last Christian event I did, and even that one's a little, more my speed than your standard church event. But I made contact with a dude named Zach a little while ago, as he was pursuing camp ministry, and he hit me up last year, and I couldn't do it last year because I had a prom dress ministry I was committed to. But it's a youth ministry and youth ministers conference, and like a 3-day weekend, and this year it was in Greensboro, North Carolina at the Sheridan/Curry Convention Center, which is, honestly, I do a lot of ministry conferences there, like the Baptist State Convention, the Crew Campus Ministry Conference. I did a lot of conferences there over the years. I'll go there just to get swag and leave. Or when I was doing campus ministry, that's where we would take our college kids every year. And So it was a good experience getting in there. And I had a lot of, not anxieties, but I was definitely emailing them all the time leading up to, of like, how often is the show floor going to be open? When am I expected to be there? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I ended up getting a hotel room in the convention center where the show was, because it was going to be a lot of back and forth and way too much driving to go anywhere else. And when I got there, I walked in, met Zach, and he had a bunch of college kids help me unload my vehicle, which was greatly helpful. And as I got set up, this is technically the first time setting up with two new pieces of equipment. The tall, it's like 5 feet tall, 6 feet tall bookshelf that holds like 9 to 12 books. It's kind of good for big displays like this because it's really helpful when people were looking for things. And also the expanded tabletop shelf, which was good for, just kind of highlighting books in visible manner. Because this is a Christian event and not a geeky event, I also brought a Spider-Man figure, a Darth Vader statue, and a straw hat of One Piece, which proved to be the best form of advertising for my target audience. Because kids will be like, is that straw hat? Is that Luffy's hat? And start a conversation. But here's the deal. I mainly do not Christian events because Faith and Fandom at its core is an outreach in mind. It is meant that if there are people who are curious about God, looking for God, or remotely interested in exploring Christianity, that are geeks, that it would be a good on-ramp for them. Or if there are people who are Christians and geeks, it could be a goal to help them grow and be discipled. But it's not normally just aimed at church people. And so it's a weird thing to be put in that area. Especially in that, because I was just not prepared for the response. Because the response was overwhelmingly positive. Whereas a Comic-Con, if there's 2,000... Because there were 2,000 people at this event. Normally, if a Comic-Con's got 2,000 people, 75 to 100 people might be interested in what I'm doing. This was like the inverse of like, people were very interested, and the biggest hit of all of it was the God is a Fan of You shirt. I had a full roster of that shirt, which usually means 5 to 6 of each size of the shirt. And when it was done, I had like 1 extra large and 1 2 extra large left, and all the rest were gone. I had to turn away like 8 small little teenage girls that wanted this shirt because I ran out of all the small sizes. But it was just really encouraging, and I got to talk to a lot of great youth ministers that were encouraged, and there were people that were coming back and like just wanting to buy more stuff because they wanted to support it. And it would come in waves, and so this was a conference where people would go into sessions, and then once the sessions had started, basically it was kind of like, I need to shut down for a couple hours until they're back in that room. And then, it was kind of go like 1 to 4, 7 to 9, maybe 8 to 10, stuff like that. And there would be people that would be waiting for me, or that would flock to me as soon as the doors open. So it's literally one of those things if I just was not mentally prepared for that. It was great. It was encouraging. And if I ever do this again, I'm definitely going to have a better idea of what to prepare for. But I also had some great conversations, and I think some of those kids left there more seen because there was somebody who was interested in the stuff they were into. There was some time on, I want to say Saturday afternoon, where there was 3 teenagers who were talking about One Piece. And they talked about One Piece at my booth for at least an hour. There's a young boy who kept literally sitting on my table, like knocking my stuff apart, because he just wanted to talk about One Piece and like character arcs and things like that. This is also one of those big events where it's too many people to see your group. So there are youth pastors like walking around with giant heads on sticks so your group could find you. It was pretty cool. But people would just come in waves. And when I'm at a Comic-Con, it's never about sales for me, because I feel like I'm there for the conversations and the interactions, and if I make sales, good. Here, presumably, the people knew about Jesus, and it was less about outreach and more about just encouragement and discipleship. And I even told one of the parents or youth ministers pretty early on, is like, no, it wasn't a parent, it was a dude running a camp, who had a booth near me. And I was telling me, I was like, I mainly don't do Christian events. I was like, because the people here already have what they need. And he looked at me, he says, do they though? He's like, you've done this. How many people in your ministry were where they should be or had everything that they needed? And he made the point that it was just as much outreach as at a Christian event as it is in a not Christian event. It just might be a more receptive environment, but there's still a lot of kids there who need the outreach. And that honestly changed my perspective. That literally shifted how I viewed doing Jesus-y events and how I'm going to approach them in the future. The dude next to me was looking for local food. And so we ended up talking about local places to try. And I found a new place in Greensboro I've never been before. It's called Fish Bones, not Bonefish Grill, Fish Bones. And it's like a mom and pop small eatery that like you can get fish, grits, that type of stuff. And I ended up getting a fried bologna sandwich with cheese grits. And it was magnificent. Another cool thing about this was there was a leader room where you could get coffee, water, and drinks and stuff for free, which greatly improved my quality of life. Yeah, it's such a different experience of all those people being there, but and hearing worship music just blasting while I've got my booth set up. Again, it's not stuff I'm used to, but man, it was a nice way to not have the negativity. Like I think I might have gotten negativity like maybe twice, but only passively. And it was definitely more positive response than anything. There was a young man named Caden who reminded me a lot of young me, like 12-year-old me, who kept coming by my booth, and he bought a book because he wanted to learn about Pokemon stuff. And so he bought a book, and he was putting stickers on the book from all the other booths. And he came by to say, hey, look, I've got this many stickers on your book now. I've got this many stickers on your book. He said, but I'm not going to cover your face, because my face is on the back left corner. He says, but don't worry, I'm not going to cover your face up. And I was like, never crossed my mind, buddy, but that's dope. But Caden kept coming by the whole weekend, and he was saying, I'm sorry if I'm taking too much time. I'm like, nah, dude, you're totally glad to be here. He came, he got chocolate, he offered me candy, he brought me a Chopper sticker from One Piece. Yeah. And the response was good. Like, I don't want to like toot too many horns or anything, because I know it was still a big blessing from God. But there were times that honestly felt like it was cheating, because I feel like I'm so used to the struggle, so used to the uphill battle of trying to be salt in, trying to not be salt in a dark place, but trying to be light in a dark place, that I'm not used to just being a light in a light place. But it turned out well. But it felt like it was honestly cheating, because people were just really into it and really responsive. And I sold out of the "Thou shalt not be a turd" stickers. I sold out of the VeggieTales stickers were a huge hit. Not surprising, but I don't think I sold that many books. I sold a good amount of books, but I sold hats. I sold bags. And it was just a neat experience. And if these kids leave here better equipped to live out their life in the groups that they're in because of this stuff, that's a fantastic thing. But yeah, there were some of the stuff that, just to make sure you understand why I'm saying it was overwhelming. There are Comic-Cons that I'll go set up for 2 to 3 days and maybe make $100 in sales. I can name shows that I've done that in just in the past year, where I'll spend $400 or $500 to be there, and then make $100 in sales. Again, it's not about the money in those scenarios; it's about the outreach opportunities. But like, it can be like, okay, I get it. I made $180 in the first 20 minutes. I'm just laughing, like, what is happening? What is going on with these people that actually like my stuff? And even by the time I got back, I had a parent in my inbox in Instagram talking about anime and encouragement for their kid. And I was like, man, this is awesome. And I know I've gotten some Facebook ads on friend requests and stuff from that. And they told me about coming back next year. And on my way out, I got to run into Ashley from Fangirling Over Jesus and bring her some Star Wars stuff. And then as well, Jason Crutchfield, who's one of my Patreon supporters, met me on the way out and gave me 3 giant crocheted stuffed animals. One of Goofy, one of Darkwing Duck, and one of Batman. I need to put a picture up of those, but it was just crazy. It was just such a big blessing. It really was. Now, this show, this past weekend, or the church ministry conference thingy, is now my second highest grossing event of all time in terms of sales. And only short of it by like maybe $200. But here's what I need you to understand. I only spent, let's see, 4 to 10, so like 6 hours, 12. I spent less than probably 18 hours on that floor over 3 days. Yeah. So this was a crazy, encouraging experience. It was good, and it also corrected my attitude where I stopped looking at Christian events as outreach, because I need to realize that those kids need it. Or just like in my own youth ministry in my church or anybody, like, nobody has it all together, and I shouldn't think that just because they're there with a church that they have their answers together. But yeah, It was a neat experience. Also, just again, I'll recommend this if you're ever in Greensboro. You should eat at Dame's Chicken and Waffles because it's magnificent. And it was really dope. But yeah, so those are my first 2 events of the year, and neither of them are Comic-Cons, but they were still good events. And I think God did some stuff that I just did not expect, and I'm grateful for. So yeah. In a couple days, I'm about to head to Captain's Comics Expo in Charleston, South Carolina, and have my first proper Comic-Con. Now, I am short on shirts, I'm short on stickers, and I don't have a new book to promote other than my poetry book. So it's whatever. I'll be there to love some people and do some sketches. Oh, by the way, on Saturday, I sat down to say, okay, I'm going to sketch. I did not get to put pencil to paper until like 9:00 at night. I got no sketches done. I think I sketched 3 sketches the whole weekend. And one youth minister I actually gave a Undertaker sketch to. But I mean, it was just, everybody was so freaking encouraging. It was like, this was like, let me love on you so crazily to just bless you in those capacities. So, best experience at a Christian event with Faith and Fandom so far. I think the last one I really remember was a mom being mad at me for having Grand Theft Auto in a book, but she bought Grand Theft Auto for her kid. So I was like, let's talk about this. But yeah, so those are the events. That's the aftermath. Let me take a moment to thank our Patreon supporters. Rivka and Tristan Birch, Dorothy Martin, Dorothy Winston, Michelle Stewart, Lynn Turner, who I will see at Captain's Comics Expo, David Brooks, Jeff Weimer, Colin Sproles, Jamie Montgomery, I think I'll see her in Florence. The Coleman family, Jonathan Herman, Rohan Petit, Gear Saber Cosplay, Scott Ward, Alicia Glenn, Jay Shee, Jason Crutchfield, Mike Perna, Todd Turner, John Jacobs, Zach Harris, Caleb Grimm, Jeanette Skaggs, Jason Bullock, Christina Ray, Sarah Lewis, Patrick Gale, Rebecca Godlove, and Adam Davis. Thank you all for supporting and the way that you do and being as encouraging as you absolutely are. And I look forward to talking to all of you soon and seeing you at a Comic-Con real soon. Bye, y'all.